Now it's time to talk about fine-tuning your approach. Now, I know there's a lot of ideas probably that go around people and they start thinking about, if I want to lose more fat, then maybe I need to eat less, or if I want to lose more fat, I need to run around the block every single day. And I want to let you know that, that's not always necessary. And probably generally speaking, the harder you go, maybe the harder you start to work, the less you start to enjoy the lifestyle. And that might mean you not be able to stick with it for as long as you'd like to. So my approach is a little different. And this fine-tuning is much less about pushing you to exercise every single day of the week. And it's definitely not about trying to make you starve yourself or limit yourself to certain quantities. It's much more about using a few natural things that we can include in our meals that are actually going to help us. So the first thing is cayenne pepper. Now, cayenne pepper is one of these interesting additives that we can use in all kinds of different meals. And it's also something that appears in a lot of those women's magazines at grocery stores. So I was a little bit suspicious of it when I first heard about it. The reality is, though, that cayenne pepper has been found to just increase your metabolism a little bit. And as well as that, it's a pretty delicious addition to a meal. Now, if you're not good with hot spices, definitely start small. But if you like your food a little bit spicy, this is a fantastic one to add to anything, like eggs, chicken, black beans with tomato salsa tastes fantastic with cayenne pepper. And I'm going to leave it up to you to think up some other combinations. But I want you to experiment with the heat level and also think about adding it to some meat as well as beans. So I'll leave you with that. The second thing is red cabbage. Now, red cabbage is incredibly healthy, has loads of great nutrition in it, and the red cabbage in particular has some really positive benefits for fat loss and for better health. So I want you to think about adding red cabbage to meat dishes, because I really love the flavor of red cabbage and meat. One of the things I do with this is a ground beef stir fry with red cabbage as well as a little bit of oil, not so much olive oil, but maybe some macadamia oil in there for some flavor. Red cabbage goes really well on the side of a lot of meals. You can have it raw, but I generally prefer to cook it. And you could cook it either by boiling it in a pot of water, or it does really well if you steam it, because you actually hold in more of the nutrients if you steam it. Just make sure that it's not really, really crunchy, because it can be a little hard to digest if it is. So make sure it's cooked nice and soft, and then you can always store more in the fridge, either cooked or raw. So what I actually will do is cut up a whole red cabbage, store it in a container in the fridge, and then just cook as much as I need with each meal. Some of the other things you could do with red cabbage, for example, I mentioned beef. Also think about combining it with some spinach and maybe even some red kidney beans as well, and then combining in some spices, because that's where red cabbage can really taste fantastic, is if you start using some of those herbs and spices that can adjust its flavor. It does also taste really great just with a bit of salt too. The next thing on our list of things we can use to fine-tune our approach is cinnamon. Now, I know I've talked about cinnamon already, and you might be thinking, oh, well, geez, cinnamon, that's not really that important because it's only something we use on our afternoon off. As it turns out, we can use cinnamon all week long, and we can use it in a number of different ways. So this is a chance for me to explain a little bit of cinnamon to you and also suggest some areas where you can use it in your cooking, your drinks, and what that could do for you. So let's be clear that cinnamon can actually lower the GI, that is the glycemic impact of a meal, by up to 29%. Now, this is pretty huge. It's about equivalent to adding a few grams of fiber to a meal. It basically means you digest your meal a little bit slower. And of course, by digesting your meal a little bit slower, this means that the blood sugar impact will be lessened, reduced, or even zeroed out. Now, cinnamon is a really fantastic thing to add to all kinds of different food, and you might be really surprised about how great it tastes. One little mention I want to make, of course, and I have mentioned it already, but that's to only use around 2 teaspoons of cinnamon per day, because it is a blood thinner. And so on that note, if you're taking any medication to thin your blood, or if you have any health concerns regarding the thinness of your blood, then it's worth just bearing that in mind. And always, if you're in doubt, please check with your healthcare professional. Now, with cinnamon, as I've mentioned earlier, you can use it in coffee or tea, and it's a great addition, especially with a little bit of vanilla. It tastes delicious, and you'll barely even notice it's there, but on top of that, it can help bring these health benefits that we're talking about to a meal if you have that coffee or tea around mealtime. Cinnamon's also great to add to something like meat. So you can add it to some beef or maybe to some chicken. And if you're making a stir fry, you can add a little bit of cinnamon in and maybe some other herbs and spices as well. And you won't actually be able to pick that it's cinnamon in particular that's adding the flavor, but the flavor will really be boosted up And if you're cooking for other people, they will definitely be asking you what's in that meat because it's going to taste fantastic. Another spot where I like to add cinnamon, which might not be that obvious, is to my eggs in the morning. Now, I know this sounds a little bit funny. What I find is it actually gives me a little bit of a French toast kind of flavor to my eggs. It's not something I do every day. It's probably not even something I do once a week, but I do it every now and then, and it just gives those eggs a totally different flavor to what I'm used to and what I'm expecting. So it's quite fun. The other thing that's important to note is that cinnamon has been found to be beneficial to cholesterol. So if that's something that you're focused on in terms of improving your cholesterol results, you definitely might want to consider using cinnamon, and always I recommend Saigon cinnamon, in your regular day-to-day meals. Last on our list of things we can fine-tune with is lemon juice. And as we've mentioned already, we can use lemon juice for our afternoon off. We can also use lemon juice during the week. Now, if you can get into a habit of using freshly squeezed lemon juice in some water, for example in the morning, or maybe in some green tea in the morning, this is a really great start to your day because, as we know, lemon juice can reduce the blood sugar response of your body. So I like to have lemon juice with some hot water in the morning, separate to a cup of tea. And what this actually does is it really helps your digestive system get ready for eating, get ready for digesting food, and you might actually find it makes beans or lentils a little easier on your stomach. The other thing you can do is take some lemon juice with cold water with each meal. And what I generally do is have a few sips of that lemon water before I start eating and then continue to drink it as I'm eating. This does two great things. It slows down how fast I'm eating, which is something I have a little bit of a problem with from time to time when I'm feeling quite hungry, or when the food is particularly delicious, but it also helps to reduce those blood sugar peaks of that meal. So lemon juice is a really great additive. Now you can also use lemon juice as a dressing, and I suggest trying it with 2 tablespoons of olive oil and with a few squirts of lemon juice added in together, mix it up, and you can use it on any salad to just lift the flavor. Also works really well with a little bit of salt and or pepper. Last but not least, of course, lemon juice on fish tastes delicious, especially when you use pepper with it as well. So I definitely recommend trying that out. And if you don't want to try it for breakfast, then definitely try it for dinner because it can taste fantastic and it might become one of your new favorite dishes. That wraps up how we can fine-tune our regular routine with food. And I hope you've got some ideas there how you might use lemon juice, cinnamon, maybe a combination of both in certain meals, and also, of course, red cabbage and cayenne pepper. Because there are different ways you can use all of these ingredients, and using 1 or 2 here and there during the day and adding this up over a week can really start to have a cumulative effect, and you can be happy knowing that you're fine-tuning your approach and knowing that you're getting some slightly increased results from that approach.